Hi, I'm Donna Guest, Creative Memories Advisor and Lazy Scrapbooker. Do you have your Creative Memories 12-inch trimmer yet? If so, I want to show you my favorite things that you've got to know about this trimmer. If you don't have one yet, you're going to want to get one. There are so many great features to this trimmer, it's nearly impossible to remember them all when a customer buys one. So I'm going to put them all in this video for you, and there are 20 of them. So here goes. When using your trimmer, you'll want to place it with a logo at the top so that you can read it. This trimmer is designed specifically for cutting Creative Memories paper and cardstock. For trimming photos, Creative Memories recommends the personal trimmer. These are 3 of the older trimmers that Creative Memories used to sell. One big thing you're going to notice about this new trimmer is that all the lines and measurements are in black printed on white, so it's so easy to see. The blade of the trimmer is located on this sturdy aluminum double track, so it's going to keep your paper in place and the blade is going to stay straight on the track. The blade itself is a safety rotary blade. Notice that you won't see the blade when picking it up, so I can't get cut. It actually takes pressing down of this housing to engage the blade, and you see it come out right there. An almost hidden feature on the trimmer is the sightline clear alignment guides. They are tucked away up here at the top and at the bottom of your trimmer. These sightline alignment guides show you exactly where your trimmer blade is going to cut with that little black line that's running across the dotted line of the mat. These sight lines come in really handy when you want to trim something and have to get it exactly right. For example, this sheet of paper from the Party Time collection has this side that turns into 6 mats. So I'm going to line it up, and with my sight line I can make sure I'm right there on the line where I need to cut. Perfect. The sightline can also help you cut sheets of school photos perfectly. When cutting, you'll notice we have this gray strip. That's the self-healing cutting mat, and it gives you up to 2,000 cuts. The self-healing cutting mat includes 4 lines to cut on. You'll notice I'm already on line number 3. When you first get your trimmer, it will be on line number 1. You'll notice the number has an arrow below it, which shows you exactly where you're going to be cutting. It serves as another sight line for you. You certainly don't have to count 500 cuts on each line, but you'll know when it's time. If it starts to make your paper feel a little bit jagged, like it's not a smooth cut, then it's time. So you simply put your finger here and lift the mat out of the trimmer. You'll notice there's an indentation there. And then when I was ready, and I'm not ready yet on this one, but when I am, I'll just turn it around to see number 4. And I've got a brand new strip there, and it's going to cut so smoothly. If you notice, look at my number 1, for example. If you can see that, you'll see how really worn this strip is. I got a lot of use out of that. And to replace it, I'm just going to put it back where it was with my number 3 up there. Simply insert it and press down. Perfect. Your trimmer's of course going to come with a mat. Replacement mats are sold separately for only $7.50. And it's a pretty good idea, especially when you're on number 3 or 4 like me, to store one here in the back. I'll show you how. So there, I can always have one stored on the bottom of this trimmer. You probably noticed on the back of the trimmer I have all these wonderful little colorful blades here. We'll come back to those. But I wanted to point out another feature. You have 4 rubber feet on the base. That's going to give you a sturdy foundation on your craft surface. One more general feature of this trimmer is the ruler. There's a 16-inch ruler that's tucked away here on the side in blue. Simply pull that out. And now you can measure up to 16 inches. And for added stability, there's a small foot on the back of the ruler right here. Just press down on this little blue tab here to stick the ruler up. And now I've got a very stable cutting surface. Speaking of the ruler, here are more tips on measuring. In addition to that 16-inch ruler, you've got a ruler right here on the aluminum track. You can see that on the right side of it. You have up to 12 inches that you can measure there. That side ruler comes in super handy because the blade housing includes a white line on the side that ensures clear measuring from a side view. you'll know exactly where your cut's going to begin. It's on this white line. So that allows you to cut in the center of paper as needed. The blade housing is exactly 2 inches wide, and it's 1 inch from the edge to that white line in the center. So what that allows you to do is measure where you're cutting by looking at this line here. It really does conserve paper because you don't cut too much. So let's say I'm going to cut a mat for this photo right here. It's 4 by 6, so I like a narrow border around my photo, so I'm going to cut it 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. So we're going to measure over on this side of the ruler at the top, 4 1/4. That's easy. Then, the same time, I'm going to measure 6 1/4 right here. Because I know that this white line is 1 inch from the edge of the blade housing, instead of going to 6 1/4, I'm going to look at 7 1/4, which is right here, and I'm going to press down to engage the blade, and then just cut until my edge of my blade housing is at 7 1/4 inches exactly. And I know that I've cut a 6 1/4 inch line. So now to cut the other side, I'm going to pull out the ruler here, and I can see 6 1/4 right up here. And I'm going to do the same thing. To make sure I don't cut past this and ruin a lot of paper, I'm going to cut 4 1/4, which, if I look at the edge of the blade housing, comes down to 5 1/4. Boom. There we go. And now I have the perfect mat for my photo. Something else you'll notice about this, when I cut the paper, you'll notice maybe there's a raised edge right here at the top, so it makes it very easy to hold my paper at a straight angle for the cut. Another measurement to notice is that right at the edge, right between the ruler and the edge of the trimmer, is exactly 5 1/2 inches. So if your ruler's folded in and you don't see it, just know that if you need to cut something that's 5 1/2 inches, just line it up to the edge of the trimmer on the left. Another cool thing about this trimmer is that you not only have a ruler here on the left, but you also have a smaller one on the right that's about 1 3/4 inches wide. So if you need to cut smaller measurements, you can certainly do that for the ruler on the right. And here are some tips. For small measurements, 1/8 of an inch is the right line. So notice I'm using the 3 line as my cutting line right now, but this 4 over here that's not been used, that is 1/8 inch. So I can actually line up something on that line and cut a tiny little strip of paper. And it's going to give me a very tiny little border of 1/8 inch, and that looks perfect. If you want to do a little more and you want to do a 1/4 inch border, the edge of the gray strip is exactly 1/4 inch. So I'm going to line up my paper to the edge of the gray strip. Hold down. Now be careful when you're cutting small bits like this. You want to really hold your paper firmly so that it doesn't slip, because this second track over here is not covering the paper. So you want to hold the paper firmly. And there we go. I have a perfect 1/4 inch strip. And finally, you can see this when it's not labeled, but you can see the line there is the 1/2 inch. So it's not that first thing right there. Go over 2 little marks, and that's the 1/2 inch. So I can cut a 1/2 inch strip right there. So it's very easy to cut different size borders and strips with this trimmer. Now, remember where I showed you on the back all these fun, colorful little blades? Your trimmer is going to come with one straight blade, and that's the one in blue. You'll notice I even have an extra one stored back here. And the trimmer provides perfect storage for up to 12 different blades. I have the whole collection right now, and these are great. You can buy these for just $9 each, and each blade gets 1,500 cuts. And again, you're not going to count those cuts, but you'll know when it's time to change. I will tell you, a lot of people have told me my trimmer may need a new blade. It's not cutting so well. The first thing I do want them to try, though, is, like we said earlier, flipping this cutting mat around, trying a different number. Try it with that. If it cuts perfectly, then you know you don't need a new blade yet. That blade is going to get 1,500 cuts compared to 500 on each line of the self-healing cutting mat. I love how easy Creative Memories made it to change out the blades if you want to use a different one. All you have to do is lift up this little tab on the side of the blade housing and gently pull out the blade. Very easy. It's not locked in or anything. And you remember it's a safety blade, so I'm not going to hurt myself. And then let's flip it over to see which one we want to use. I'm going to use Victorian. So all we do is lift that up again, press the blade in, and then press it down until it clicks. Very easy. And now on our flat surface, we're ready to cut using the Victorian blade. Very cool. Now you have a great looking edge. Just remember, when you're ready to cut a straight line in, make sure that you've switched out your blade or you're going to get a surprise. I'll show you samples I've made using each of these blades up close. So this, of course, in blue is obviously the straight blade. Then in green, we've got wave. And then in purple, we've got scallop. Much bigger pattern than wave. Then in yellow, that's my favorite. That one's called decal. It gives it a nice torn edge. Then this green is Victorian that we just did earlier. Next in black, we've got the stamping blade. It can look like a postage stamp, as you see. Next, the final two, we've got the scoring blade. If you like to make cards, this puts a nice fold in the paper, which I'll show you over there on the trimmer. And then finally, the perforating blade. If you want to cut something and actually tear it apart, or if you want to just leave it not torn apart, it will give you a cool little look. But this is the perforating blade with paper that has been torn apart. I'm going to show you how to use those last two because it's a little bit easier to see when you're doing it. So first I've got the scoring blade. So we're going to swap that out over here. Take out my straight blade, put in the scoring. And I want to make a 4x6 card, for example. So I have an 8x6 piece of paper and I'm going to fold it in the middle. Let me make sure that it is exactly 8 inches. It is. So I'm going to put a score in it in the middle at 4 inches. You don't have to press too hard. I learned the hard way that if you press too hard, it can actually cut your paper. So just press firmly. And it gives me just enough of a score to where now it's a very easy and very neat fold. I love the scoring blade. I use it a lot to make tent cards as well. And now let's get a good look at the perforating blade. We're going to put that one in the case. And I'll show you what it does. Again, it's not going to cut your paper. It's just going to put a perforated line. And so if you can see that, you'll see that there's a little edge. It's kind of a cool design if you want to use that for something. It looks like stitching almost. But if you want to use this to make a tear off, you can do that as well. It's important to note that depending on which blade you're using, if it has a unique pattern, it's going to give you a different look depending on how you insert it into the blade housing. Let's start with logo to logo. We have our Creative Memories logo over here, and I'm going to use the side with the logo that says stamping blade and the CM logo and let it face the logo. Okay, now let's cut and see the look you get. Okay, that, as you'll notice, looks like the edge of a stamp. All right, let's try it again. All right, I'm going to switch the blade around. Okay, this time the logo is going to be facing away from the logo. And we'll cut it. So check it out. It's a different look. It looks almost like the scallop somewhat. Now, you can, of course, get a different look if you turn your paper around, but typically you're cutting off this edge over here because you're measuring it out here. So just remember that some of these blades are going to give you a different look depending on how you insert your blade. Next, you have a 45-degree line here that lets you allow to cut 45-degree angles. Let's cut a 4x4 square. Okay, from this little square, let's say I want to cut it diagonally across here. You could do that just by lining it up on the line. Now, I could do it anywhere on the square that I wanted to. Now, if I did want to cut it from end to end, I would use the cutting line on the mat, or I would use the sight lines that are tucked away and make sure they intersect with the corners. So that's one easy way to do it. And now we've got two triangles. But there are other functions for the 45-degree angle because you're not always going to be cutting a square in half. And there, now I've got a ribbon just by using the white line here, the 45-degree angle, and the cutting line on the mat. Speaking of triangles, many people often ask, how can I cut this big 12 by 12 sheet diagonally in half? Well, the trimmer's not quite large enough to make a cut there, so you do have to bend the paper. So you want to bend it ever so slightly in the middle. So we're going to fold it end to end. Make sure I get that right. And then just put a tiny crease in the middle. You don't have to fold the whole thing, but just in the middle. And now let's transfer this over to the trimmer. Okay, I'm going to point it there at the cutting line. You could also use this sight line as well. And it may be easier this time if I'm going to use the raised edge down here at the bottom to make sure that I've got the paper straight against that. And I'm pointing at the cutting line. So now we're just going to press down and cut that in half. And now we've got two perfect triangles from our 12 by 12 piece of paper. And just press out the crease. You'll never even notice it's there, especially when you start putting your pictures on top of it. In other videos, I've talked about keeping the weight down on your album. Now, what I'm about to do goes against my theory of being a lazy scrapbooker, but I do like to keep the weight down on my album so that I can get more photos and papers in my album. So what I'm going to do, remember this mat I cut for this photo earlier? I'm going to cut the center out of it. So this accomplishes two things. Cardstock's heavy, and so the more that I cut out of it, the less weight is going to be in my album, but also the more cardstock I have to use for something else. So I'm just going to come here to my trimmer. It's just a quick extra step. And because this doesn't cut the white line until I press down, I don't cut at the beginning. I'm going to slide it right here. Notice where I am, about ½ inch in. And I'm about ½ inch in over here. So I'm not making a neat cut. That's the lazy part. I'm not doing this neatly. There we go. Still lazy. And I'm just going to cut the center out of this mat. And you'll see what will happen. Hopefully I cut enough. Oh, I did. Yep. Just pop that out there. Okay. So I still have an excellent mat for this photo here. And I'm going to put a little tape runner on the edges here. Using the repositionable tape runner. I'm a big fan of that one. Great. So now we have the mat. And notice all of that weight is gone. If you do this for all your photos, if you mat with cardstock a lot, it really is going to make a difference. And I just saved cardstock that I can turn into a cute journaling mat. And with this great feature of being able to cut when you want to cut in the center of something, watch what else you can do. Now we've got a really cool frame for our page, and we've got lots of paper left over. And we can use that for something else. And finally, the 12-inch trimmer fits perfectly inside Creative Memory's current tools organizer, which makes it great for travel. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you got some great new tips. If you're a subscriber to my channel, thanks so much. If not yet, be sure to hit the red button down below and hit subscribe so you'll see all future videos. Thanks again, and happy scrapbooking. And now go get your trimmer.